Even a screw from that Rolex cost more than your salary. Salesman said to Ozzy Osbourne what happened at one of Los Angeles's most prestigious watch boutiques that Friday afternoon became a masterclass in humiliation, power, and grace. A 75-year-old man in scuffed sneakers asked to try on a $125,000 Rolex, and the sales team tried to make him feel small. 10 minutes later, their world would tilt, because this wasn't an ordinary man. This was a name that could make the city itself hold its breath. Before we begin, if you love powerful true legend stories and the code of respect, hit subscribe to Voices of Darkness and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. If you love the Ozzy Osbourne or rock legends, share this video now. Prove your love. Kevin Brooks had learned to count minutes the way a boxer counts rounds. Round 1. Unlock the chrome door at 9:57 a.m. Lights winking on across Italian marble like a runway. Round 2. Glide a microfiber cloth across glass cases until his reflection looked like a second self. Round 3. Rehearse the gospel according to Trevor Hamilton, store manager accent as sharp as a cufflink, and self-appointed prophet of the first 10 seconds. Read the shoes, Trevor had told him that morning, leaning in like a conspirator. The watch they walked in wearing, the cut of the jacket, 10 seconds and you'll know who has a portfolio and who has a fantasy. Kevin nodded because he needed the job. The word needed wasn't poetic for him. It was arithmetic. $85,000 in student loans, $3,500 a month for his mother's treatments, rent due on Tuesday. He could hear the numbers in the air the way some people swear they hear electricity hum. Still, the lesson bothered him. He'd grown up in Phoenix, where the richest man in their cul-de-sac watered his lawn in basketball shorts and a faded college tee. Worth, Kevin believed, had a funny way of dressing down. Trevor didn't believe it. Beverly Hills is different, he'd say, smoothing a silk tie that glowed like midnight. Money here dresses itself. At noon, a beam of light slid across the Daytona case as if the sun itself was curious. Kevin took it as a sign to polish it one more time, the panda dial gleaming like a wink. He whispered the product code under his breath, the reference number he'd memorized like a prayer. He'd never wear it, not in this lifetime. But sometimes when he cleaned the glass, he could see it on his wrist. In a parallel universe where numbers weighed less, the door chimed. Trevor didn't look up. He was on the phone with a Mr. Rodriguez about a limited edition submariner. Yes, sir. The Steve McQueen piece. Only 100 units worldwide. His voice traveled the length of the store like perfume. Kevin glanced toward the entrance. Old blue jeans, black polo, hair to the shoulders in soft disarray, New Balance sneakers softened by miles, an old leather bag, the kind that doesn't try to be anything but a bag. The man's posture had a slight tilt to it, a tremor attempting to hide itself. His eyes, though, the eyes were bright. Not the frantic brightness of a spender, but the steady shine of someone who's seen both ends of the world and made his peace with both. 10 seconds. Shoes. Shirt. Bearing. Trevor's rules lined up like dominoes in Kevin's head. He took a breath and stepped forward with the kind of smile that's been practiced in the mirror, the smile that says, I'm here to help but not to hope. Good afternoon, sir. Anything specific you're looking for today? The man's voice landed like a bass note, warm, roughened by 1,000 nights. Yeah, mate. That Daytona there. Mind if I have a closer look? Kevin's eyes slid to the price tag. On $25,000 before tax. He felt a tug of Trevor's doctrine. Protect the inventory, protect the minutes. It's quite an expensive piece, he said, preemptively gentle. I can also show you some fantastic, more approachable options. The man's eyebrows twitched. Within reach, is it? What exactly do you mean by that? Kevin chose his words like a man chooses a path through a minefield. It's typically purchased by collectors, entertainment executives, tech founders, people with substantial portfolios. The man's smile dimmed a notch. He didn't argue. He simply looked at the watch again as if to ask it a private question. The bell above the door chimed again and a couple drifted in. Sharp suit, silk dress, the perfume of new success. They moved like people who were used to being watched. Trevor ended his call and glided over. Is Kevin taking good care of you? He asked the older man, already half-turned toward the couple. The man didn't flinch. Your colleague thinks the Daytona's beyond me, based on my appearance, apparently. Trevor's smile widened into something managerial. a shape that looked like empathy from far away. Kevin is a quick study. We maintain certain standards with high-value pieces. Perhaps you'd like to see our pre-owned selection. Excellent condition, very accessible. Accessible to whom? The man asked softly. Sir? Trevor said in the careful tone of a bouncer at a velvet rope. That Daytona is $125,000 plus tax. Cash preferred. For purchases over $50,000, we request bank references. It's standard. Kevin watched the man's hands. No anger, no fluster. Just a small sigh, like a memory arriving. Then the old leather wallet emerged. It looked like something rescued from the 1980s, still holding the ghosts of ticket stubs and backstage passes. Trevor's rulebook leaned forward, ready to say, I told you so. The man laid a card on the glass. It didn't shine. It didn't need to. Titanium has a way of making everything around it feel ornamental. Trevor picked it up and felt the weight. The letters caught light like razor's edge. J.P. Morgan Private Bank. Under it, John M. Osbourne, private client since 1985. Something changed in the room. Kevin felt it first. Not the card. The name, John M. Osbourne. His brain flipped through the jukebox of his childhood. Garage radio on Saturday mornings, his mother singing while she made pancakes, the scratch of vinyl. A voice like thunder and velvet. No, it couldn't be. The man blinked at the silence, then offered a half-smile that had comforted crowds and terrified arenas. That accessible enough for you, gentlemen? 2 hours earlier, just off sunset, a Marlboro sky hung over West Hollywood like a curtain call. The weekday rush moved as if choreographed by a tired god. He listened to the radio because silence had started to feel like a room with the lights off. Coming up, the DJ said. A Black Sabbath block, because why not? He laughed alone. Because why not indeed? The first riff struck like the crack of a gavel. It was a song born before half the city was. A hymn that had taught teenagers how to be immortal for 3 minutes at a time. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, the tremor barely noticeable today. Good days were gifts. He had learned to open them slowly. A text lit up his phone. Where are you? Kelly called. Dinner tonight? He smiled without meaning to. Sharon, always direct. Kelly, his comet, bright and mischievous, streaking through his quieter dusk. Dinner sounded like something you put on a calendar and then guard like a secret. Maybe, he thought, it was time to treat himself to something that ticked. Sharon always said a watch made a man look more distinguished. He'd tell her a watch made a man more punctual. They'd both be right. He reached into the bag on the passenger seat, same leather, same smell of old road, and found the wallet older than some country's pop stars. Inside, a tiny promo shot from Blizzard of Oz, a nightclub ticket from a night that had become legend in the family lore. A card that had always opened doors even when his hands shook too much to push. At a red light, a group of bikers thundered past, their jackets flashing like a campfire story you only half remember. A tall rider threw a 2-finger salute without looking back. He returned it instinctively, a quiet bond passing between engines. Love and respect ride strange highways. The light turned green. Beverly Hills waited with its polished stones and polished smiles, and he drove toward a store where time was arranged in glittering circles. Exclusive timepieces didn't sell watches so much as it sold permission to speak in a room where money had the last word. Chandeliers feathered the ceiling with light the way a peacock arranges its tail. Floors of Italian marble reflected lives most people only visited. Display cases were altars. Reference numbers were scripture. Trevor Hamilton moved through the place like a high priest. His accent had been brushed at a Connecticut boarding school and pressed in California sun. He'd learned customer service the way some men learn fencing. Parry, advance, smile, withdraw. He was good at it, which is to say he could make people feel lucky to be allowed to spend. Kevin stood at the apprentice's distance, near enough to learn, far enough to be invisible. He kept thinking of his mother's laugh, the way it used to bounce off kitchen tile when the chemo hadn't stolen it yet. He imagined sometimes buying her a watch with a dial big enough to read in low light, with numbers that promised a gentler countdown. When the older man walked in, time didn't stop. It just leaned in. Anything specific you're looking for today? Kevin had asked. The Daytona had answered for him. Then came the quiet humiliation in polite wrapping paper. The insinuation. The policy. The word accessible used like a velvet mallet. And then, Titanium. When Trevor saw the name John M. Osbourne, his confidence cracked like a porcelain mask. He didn't know yet. Not fully. He knew the name tasted famous. He knew his palms felt suddenly damp. He knew the air pressure in the room changed the way it does before a storm. The door chimed again. The couple who'd floated in, she with a voice like radio gold, he with eyes that had spent time under stage lights, paused mid-whisper. The woman's head tilted. That accent, that cadence, the old country hidden under California vowels. Oh my God, she breathed, hand rising to her mouth. Are you Ozzy Osbourne? The man turned. The smallest smile a person can make and still be seen. Guilty as charged, love. Trevor went white to the edges. Kevin felt the floor gently recommend he sit down. The couple moved closer in a hush that felt like church. You're a legend, the man said, fingers twitching as if trying to remember a riff. Your work with Randy Rhoads, with Zach Wilde, Tony. Geezer, Bill, the older man said softly, as if naming mountains. We certainly made some noise. The store had a new sound now, the sound of the staff's own breathing. Of reverence, quickly learned. Trevor found his voice where he'd dropped it. Mr. Osbourne, we had no idea. Please accept our apologies. Allow us to show you the Daytona properly. Osbourne looked at Kevin, not through him, at him. I asked to see a watch, he said gently. Not a resume of your clients. Kevin swallowed. Yes, sir. You're right. I'm sorry. There it was again. The bass note of a voice built to carry over noise and still be kind. Good lad, Osbourne said. Most interesting people I know dress like they're about to clean their garage. Trevor unlocked the case and lifted the watch like a relic. In the lights, it looked like captured snow. He set it on a suede pad and slid it forward with both hands. Osbourne didn't rush. He turned the piece over, felt its weight. The sweep of the second's hand was smooth enough to calm a storm. He set it against his wrist. It belonged there in the way certain songs belong to certain voices. Lovely, he murmured. Shall I begin the paperwork? Trevor asked, voice careful as a tightrope. Of course, Osbourne said, and then stopped him with a glance. But I want to ask you something first. Both of you. Trevor and Kevin stood straighter than they knew they could. Would it have mattered if you knew who I was? Or should the way you treat a man depend on something else? Silence. Real silence, the kind that makes your heart sound immodest. Kevin found the answer first because he needed it more. It shouldn't depend on that, he said. Sir. Trevor nodded, the motion small but honest. It shouldn't, and it won't. Not again. Osbourne smiled, and it felt like getting a second chance you hadn't asked for out loud. News does not travel in straight lines in Beverly Hills. It ricochets. The couple texted someone whose job it was to make sure interesting things weren't allowed to happen in obscurity. A blogger across the street took a photo of a reflection, just a shoulder, just a jawline, and typed a caption asking a question he already knew the answer to. Outside, 2 bikes idled at the curb, chrome catching afternoon like a dare. One rider had the easy stillness of men who have spent years making decisions at 80 miles per hour. He glanced through the glass, did a double take, then laughed. One bark, delighted. He tapped the window with 2 knuckles, a salute not to celebrity but to survival. Osbourne returned it with the smallest lift of his chin. Inside, Kevin filled out forms with hands that refused to forget the shape of their earlier mistake. Trevor watched the room the way a man watches a tide. The couple asked for a photo, and Osbourne obliged with a warmth that suggested generosity had nothing to do with money. Parkinson's? The woman asked gently, eyes bright with real concern. Stable, Osbourne said. Today's a good day. Good days deserve mementos. The husband grinned. That Daytona's more than a memento, sir. That's a crown, Osbourne chuckled. It's a way to know when I'm late to dinner with my daughter. Kelly? The woman said, delighted she knew enough to be familiar. Kelly, he said, and the name filled the store like a song everyone likes. Trevor boxed the watch with the care a man uses to mend a mistake. Kevin double-checked the receipt as if accuracy could be a kind of apology. When Osbourne laid the titanium card down again, it clicked on the counter like punctuation. Transaction complete. But the story wasn't. Osbourne held the box without looking at it. He looked at them instead. Do me a favor, he said. Write somewhere in the back where only you'll see it. Judge not by appearance, but by character. That way the reminder is yours before it's anyone else's. Trevor wrote it on the packing slip and, moments later on a small white card he slid into his own wallet. The words looked right in ink. That evening, in a room softer than any showroom, Sharon read a book in a pool of lamplight. He told her the story without varnish, letting the silly parts be silly and the sharp parts stay sharp. She listened with the long patience of a woman who has seen him break and repair himself a dozen times. Best 137 grand I ever spent, he said at the end. She arched an eyebrow that had never lost its talent for editorial. The watch? The reminder, he said. The watch only tells time. The day told me what to do with it. She reached out and the watch caught the light between them like a small sun. Dinner with Kelly? She asked. He nodded. Wouldn't miss it. I might even be early. She laughed and the kitchen held the sound like a secret. On Monday, Trevor printed a photo, a moment where 3 people looked like they'd found the right version of themselves. He framed it and hung it on the office wall. Under it, he taped a narrow strip of paper with block letters neat as a ledger. Judge not by appearance, but by character. Kevin saw it every morning. On days when his mother's pain made the numbers in his head scream, he'd touch that frame and let the words push the tide back. The rulebook changed. Read the shoes became read the soul. He started offering water to men in work boots before he did to men in loafers, not out of pity, but out of discipline. 6 months later, Kevin was the top seller in the store. Not because he chased whales, but because he learned how to see. People can feel that. They buy the feeling before they buy the watch. The story traveled the way good stories do, by whispers and nods and the occasional headline that gets the details wrong but the truth right. A lesson had been given in a cathedral of seconds, and for once, everyone in the room had learned the same thing. If this story moved you, smash the like button, comment Ozzy Osbourne forever, and share this video now. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Darkness. Let's hit 1,000 subscribers together. Prove your loyalty. Prove your brotherhood. Let's ride as one.